friends, welcome back to the channel, or if you are new here, welcome. One of my bigger goals for homemaking this time of year is usually to fill up the freezer as much as I can, work on filling up our pantry, having staples and things on hand. After Christmas, we usually have a couple winter storms that come through, even if they're just ice, that really affects our town. We're in a very small town that really can't keep up, and the roads are awful. Even when it's just like rain, you don't need much on the roads for our roads to become very dangerous. So whenever we have one of these winter storms, a lot of times we are stuck in our house. We can't get out. We can barely even get out of our driveway, let alone our neighborhood. So the entire town shuts down. No one really goes to work. No one goes to school. Everybody just kind of holds up in their house until they can actually get out. And it's usually a couple of days. There have been really extreme ones where it was a couple of weeks. In those instances, there is power outages. People are going without heat. They go without water, stuff like that. And I like to be prepared if we are ever in those situations. So one of my focuses this week was to kind of work on filling the freezer. Now, not all of my meals are going to go to the freezer. I just like to slowly work on them throughout the week and kind of just slowly put things into the freezer. And that way, eventually, I will have a stock built up. One of the first things that I was working on this week were some banana muffins. Now, I usually love the walnuts put into them. However, my kids do not care for the nuts and they prefer chocolate chips. So I usually will call these muffins chunky monkeys, because that is what my brother, he loved the bananas and chocolate combination. And we always just referred to them as chunky monkeys. So these are chunky monkey muffins. This is just a banana bread recipe that I turned into muffins. It's a lot easier for my kids to eat, and I love the way that these freeze. So anytime I have a couple of bananas that are not so great anymore looking, I like to mash them up and make this. It's a very quick recipe. And like I said, whatever that they don't eat that morning, I can put in the freezer. And then I just pull out whenever they ask for muffins. I pull out a couple at a time. I defrost them, and they are just like they're out of the oven. Another thing that I love having on hand, specifically in the freezer, are bagels. Homemade bagels, I feel like I used to be so intimidated by. However, they are incredibly easy, and especially after you have done it a couple of times and you have the hang of the routine and stuff that you're doing. I mean, they are insanely easy. And you can customize them too to however you want. My kids love everything bagels, so that is what I'm making. But if you have a different kind of bagel that you prefer, you can absolutely switch it up. But like I said, these are really great to put in the freezer. My kids love making like little pizza bagels for lunch with them. They love having bagel sandwiches. You can use them for all different kinds of things, for like buns, for bagels if you're wanting, but they work really great right out of the freezer. So I love having these on hand for quick lunches, quick breakfast, whatever it may be. These are the perfect thing to do ahead of time and put in the freezer for whenever you want to use them. Each batch makes about 8 bagels, depending on the size. My kids actually like them a little smaller, so sometimes I'll stretch it out to like 10 bagels to make kind of medium-ish to small bagel sizes. We don't like the huge ones because my kids tend to only eat like half at a time. So a lot of times I will stretch them out. I have some store-bought bagels on hand, so I actually just did one batch. A lot of times I like to do 2 batches if I don't have them on hand, and that way I have quite a bit to put away in the freezer. My kids love bagels, and so they don't tend to last very long. And like I said, you can use them for a handful of different recipes. And then if for whatever reason you forgot about them, you can always use them for breadcrumbs. I love doing that with different bread recipes that are starting to go bad, something that I forgot about in the freezer. You can just pull them out. You can use them for croutons. You can use them for breadcrumbs in different recipes. I love having the variety of those kind of things in the freezer. I will have the recipes from today's video down below in the description box if you want to try any of these out, but I'll just kind of explain what I'm doing here. So I had the dough, I put the dough together, and then I let it rise until it doubled in size. I punched it down and got all of the air bubbles out, and then I divided it into 8 different bagels. Like I said, I kind of will differ. Sometimes I'll make them a little larger, sometimes I'll make them a little smaller. It just kind of depends. And I like also having that variety of sizes because then my kids can kind of choose. If they're super hungry, they'll get a larger one. If they're not, they'll get a smaller one. So anyway, I shaped them into balls, and then I'm just using my thumb and my fingers and rotating it to make a hole in the center. While I am doing this, I greased a pan. So you can do the grease pan. However, it works so much better if you actually use parchment paper. So that is what I usually use, but I did run out. So I don't have any parchment paper, so I did just make sure that I greased the pan really well. And then I'm going to cover them and put them off to the side while I was waiting for my water to boil. If you place them in a warm area, they'll rise a little bit more while you're waiting for your water to boil. Now, this is not just water. I have baking soda and honey into it, and then you wait for it to boil, and then I usually do just about 2 at a time. And you rotate them every 30 seconds. So they cook 30 seconds on one side, you flip it, they cook another 30 seconds, and then I take them out and I put them right back on the pan. And then I do 2 more, and you just rotate through them. And then once they're all done, if you're putting any kind of topping on, like I did the everything bagel seasoning, you would put that on before you put them in the oven. This is just an everything bagel seasoning that I have on hand. I mixed it up probably for bagels. I'm not really sure if it was for another reason, but I usually have the seasoning on hand, like from the store, but I, for whatever reason, ran out, and so I made my own not that long ago. And I believe it's like salt, poppy seeds, garlic powder, onion powder. It's just a mixture of that kind of stuff. And then I sprinkled it on pretty heavily. My kids really like it. So I put that on, and then I'm going to put it in the oven. Here is how they turned out. They got a little browner than I was expecting just because I got busy with something else, but you couldn't even notice. They were still nice and fluffy on the outside. My kids love to toast those a second time in the toaster, and then before they put cream cheese on or make a sandwich or whatever it may be. I am jumping on through the day, and this is a little later the same day, and I am making lasagna soup. This is something that is really, really easy, and it comes together really quick. It's pretty much a one-pan meal. Well, it is a one-pan meal, and you can add in spinach or whatever you want. I like doing this. I didn't have spinach on hand. I usually like putting that in, but I didn't have any on hand. However, this always turns out so good. It's always a family favorite, and it's really good for those really cold evenings, which tonight that was one of them. I usually will use a ground Italian sausage with a pound of ground beef. Sometimes I'll half them if I don't want too much meat. But I did not have any Italian sausage on hand. It has been wild over here. I cannot even believe the amount of stuff that we have had going on, way more than usual, which is usually pretty chaotic. But anyway, I did not have a ton of time to get groceries this past weekend, and I have a pretty massive grocery list going into this next week. So anyway, I did not have Italian sausage on hand, so what I'm using is a pound of ground turkey and a pound of ground beef. I sauteed those. Like I said, if you don't want a ton of meat, you can just half those and just, have a lot less. So that is usually what I do, but I did not do that this time. So anyway, it was a pound of ground turkey, a pound of ground beef. I sauteed those until they were done, put it in an onion that I had diced up pretty finely. And then I started adding in tomato sauce. I added in a can of diced tomatoes and some beef broth. And with that, I kind of just measured with my heart. I did about 4 cups and then determined if I needed more or less, depending on the consistency I wanted in the soup.
You should know that I won't leave you. I'll stay beside you. I'm never letting you go. You've been lost and alone in the city lights, I know, but I will guide you home.
Hello, good evening, friends. I wanted to pop on and say hello before I showed you what we were having for dinner. It has been such a crazy busy day, so I opted just to make a big pot of lasagna soup. This is not something that I make too often, but it is a family favorite of ours. It is nice and cold outside. The boys have been playing outside while my husband's working on the car, so it is very cold, and I'm sure they will enjoy a nice bowl of lasagna soup. And then I also, I'm coming in now. So I also did make a bagged salad, so I'll turn it around and I'll show you what we're having. Here is how the lasagna soup turned out. I just broke some, this was actually leftover oven ready lasagna noodles that I had on hand, so I just broke apart the ones that we had to make it easier to eat. And then I just boiled those in the soup, which I've never really done before. I'm always usually scared to do that, but I did do it tonight and it worked out perfectly. So anyway, that is the lasagna soup. And then I said that I just made a very simple bagged salad. This is the one that I usually buy. This is our favorite. It is just Caesar salad kit. And it is the one that comes, does it say it? No. It's the one that comes with a pepper packet. That one, it used to say it, but it doesn't now. And I don't know, this is like, this is one of our favorites. So anyway, I'm just having that. I don't have any garlic bread or anything like that on hand. So this is what dinner is tonight. And we are moving right along to the next meal. One reason I love having a bunch of stuff in my freezer are weeks like this where I wasn't really able to get very much at the grocery store just because I was so pressed with time and we had a lot going on. So because of that, we don't really have a ton of groceries on hand, but weeks like that, having stuff in your freezer and in your pantry stocked up on is always really nice, because then you don't have to have a ton of stuff from the grocery store and it gets you through. So we had this pork roast frozen in our freezer. I had a couple of them. This is, I believe, our last one. I am going to be making a very simple pork taco. I love doing this because you can usually just have it cook all day long. If you go to work, you could put it in the crock pot. I love searing it on both sides and then heavily seasoning it with like taco seasoning. So if you have a taco seasoning mix, you can put that on. If not, you can just use a variety of seasonings like I'm doing, paprika, cumin, chili powder, garlic powder, onion powder. Those all work great and they're basically like taco seasoning. So I'm putting that all on and I'm going to sear it on both sides, and then I'm going to put in some salsa that I have on hand. You can use a can of diced tomatoes if you don't have salsa, and some beef broth, and then you'll just let it simmer low and slow all day until you can shred it. And I put it in quesadillas. It kind of depends what kind of mood I'm in, but sometimes I will do a lot more, sometimes I don't do nearly as much. but it's just really nice to be able to let it cook low and slow all day, and then you can kind of come back to it and decide what you want to do for dinner. While that was cooking on the stove, I am going to start on some pizzas. Now, originally I was planning on doing pizzas to put in the freezer, but my kids, as I was making them, they decided that that sounded really great for lunch. So I'm going to be making pizzas for lunch. However, this is another great recipe to have on hand in your freezer if you need a quick lunch, a quick dinner. You can also, I don't have it in this video, but I will have it next week. I took this same dough recipe and I made a breakfast pizza. We were in a pinch and for dinner, and I actually did breakfast for dinner, but we did breakfast pizzas. That is always such a huge hit, and it works out really great to put in the freezer too. So anyway, I will have the dough recipe down below in the description box for this crust. I'm going to put it together and then I'll let it rise for a little bit while I'm getting everything else ready. I am greasing my pans really, really well because I do not want the dough to stick. So that is rising. I'll punch it down and then I will spread it onto these pans. Now, when I was discussing the pizza and everything with the kids for lunchtime, my daughter, she had some requests. So I ended up getting a little creative. We were doing one cheese pizza, just like I usually do it. There is nothing different there. But she wanted something more along the lines of like Pizza Hut, like breadsticks type of things. So I made a mixture of butter that I softened, and then I put in garlic and a bunch of different herbs, and I'm spreading it on the pizza. Now just be careful because it is butter. It will like melt and link over the sides. So if you could put a foil or a pan or something underneath it just in case. But I also then, after I smeared that on, I put some just mozzarella cheese on. She doesn't love a ton of cheese, so I put enough to get the other kids to eat it. But so I had a little bit of the mixture left over, so I went ahead and I spread it on this crust before I put the sauce on. So I already have I pre-baked this one until it started to brown. The other one I did not do because I wanted it more fluffy and not so much of a pizza crust, like thick, you know, they were thick, but crunchy. That's the word I was looking for. So I didn't want it crunchy because I wanted it more of a breadstick. So I did not pre-bake that. I just went ahead and I got all the air bubbles out and spread it on the pan and put the butter mixture and cheese on and put it in the oven. Then I pulled it out whenever it was just about ready. And then while that was going, I have this one that I did pre-bake. I'm putting the toppings on now, and then I'll take the breadsticks out. Here is how they turned out. Everybody absolutely loved these, even more than the pizza. So this is something that I will have to continue to do. I had some marinara sauce on the side that they just dipped them in. I warmed it up and it was just like some cheesy breadsticks. And because I didn't have any available to go in the freezer, I will be making some of these whenever I have some downtime throughout my next week to actually put in the freezer. And to do that, you just don't bake them. So you put everything in. You can pre-bake the crust, put all the toppings on, let it cool down, and then you can wrap it and put it in the freezer. And you just take it right out and put it in the oven whenever you're ready to eat it. This is several hours later. I am checking the pork and shredding it. I just shred it right into the juices. So then when I take them out, I just made some really simple quesadillas with these, but the juice is so good. I love topping it on rice. I love making taco bowls when I make stuff like this because it is so flavorful. So I'm just shredding it up and keeping it in the juice to keep all those flavors going. Here is how dinner turned out. We have just some simple rice. I did put potatoes in them, and this is not ketchup, it's actually like a hot sauce. So anyway, I did steam that with some potato chunks and just some odds and ends seasonings. I put the gravy over, it's not really a gravy, the juices that the pork cooks in. I put that over top with some meat and then sour cream and the hot sauce. And then these also have the pork in them, so it's just cheese and pork. I like mine a little done, so that is why it's like that. But anyway, that is dinner for tonight. I'm just plating everybody's. And then I also did make a double batch of chocolate chip cookies, so I'm gonna start putting those in for any of the kids that want some chocolate chip cookies after dinner. But that is dinner. If your family is like ours, you probably love tacos. We love tacos and can eat them in basically every form every day, I think. I don't know if we would ever get tired of them. So this recipe that I am making is chicken enchiladas, and this is not at all authentic, but I swear this is such a good recipe. This has been one of my go-to recipes for years and years and years. It is a very easy to throw together, and it is a complete crowd pleaser. So if you have people coming over, I know I've shared these before, and I'm assuming that I have talked them up every time too, because they are really that good. So if you're going to try anything of mine from this video, try these. These are incredible. They make a huge batch, so they are perfect if you're having a bunch of guests over, or if you're having family stay with you, anything like that. These are so, so good. I'll have everything that went into that mixture along with this one down below in the description box if you want to try making these. So that was the filling. Now I'm going to start on the topping. This is the mixture that you will pour over the enchiladas once you have them all rolled up. I did 1 can of cream of chicken. I'm doing the rest of the can of the green chilies that I had in the chicken mixture. And then I am doing... I don't think it was the whole package. I'm going to have to check the recipe myself, but I think it was only partial of the package of the taco seasoning. And then I added about half a can of milk to that cream of chicken can, and I'm just slowly putting it into this mixture to, you want it a little bit more on the thinner side because it does thicken up, but that is what I was trying to achieve, just to make sure that I was putting in enough to kind of get the consistency I was looking for. And then I'll set that aside. I'll roll up all the enchiladas, and then I'll pour that on when it's all done. Oh, I didn't want to forget, you also pour in some of the mixture under the enchiladas. That way they are significantly easier to get up out of the pan. So I didn't do very much, maybe 1/4 cup into that large casserole dish, and then I'll roll them up, I'll place them on top, and I just line the entire dish. Now once that is full, I usually have mixture left over, so I will then get out a smaller dish and roll up the remainder exactly the same way. I'm showing you the enchiladas, but I am not putting them in the oven. I'm just putting them off to the side because they do need the cheese and the topping that we made before we put them in the oven. So I just put them off to the side until I'm done with this dish. Then I can evenly distribute the mixture we put on top and the cheese before I put them in. Here's how they look before the oven. So now that they're both done, I'm going to pop them into a 400-degree oven until they are nice and bubbly. The cheese is nice and melted and it starts browning on top. While that is going, I'm going to be making some potatoes. I have been making a lot of rice lately, so whenever I do that, I like to kind of switch it up and do some kind of Mexican style potatoes, and that is what I'm doing here. So I diced up a bunch of potatoes and some onions. I have those going in just the tiniest amount of oil that I toss them in, salt, pepper, and then similar seasonings, if not exactly the same. If you have another taco seasoning mixture, you can put that in. Again, I'm just using the same seasonings like I do for a taco seasoning. I'm mixing those up, making sure everything is nice and coated, and then I'm going to let them cook with the lid off for a while. Once they start cooking on the outside, then I will go ahead and add the lid so then they kind of steam more for the inside. Here is how dinner turned out. Like I said, I pull them out once they're nice and bubbly and they start turning a golden brown on top. You can use the broiler for a couple of minutes if you want. Usually I do because that is just how I love doing it. But I love topping these with some sour cream, a big handful of lettuce. Sometimes my kids will even top it with more cheese. I love cilantro on mine, but we have a couple of kids in the family that have that soap gene, so I never put any cilantro on everybody's, just pretty much on mine. So I have some salsa, some hot sauce, cilantro, but this is for sure one of our absolute favorites. I mentioned earlier in the video that this week was way more chaotic than it usually is. I feel like I'm always telling you guys that it's super chaotic, which it is, and I think that's just the stage of life that I am in right now. But this week has been wild. So this was a meal that I love throwing together very quickly. It has very little ingredients, which is great because I was running low at this point. But this is something that I call ground beef and dumplings. You can do it with noodles. You can do it over mashed potatoes instead of adding dumplings. You can kind of just do whatever you want. When I do this, I don't usually do that cream of chicken that I am putting in now, but I usually do 2 cans of cream of mushroom. However, I was out of cream of mushroom at this point, so I used a cream of chicken and I mixed it all together. I think in the end you can't even tell. So I did 1 cream of mushroom, 1 cream of chicken. I added in ground beef into the bottom of the crock pot, and then that was a couple cups of beef broth. Couldn't think of what it was. So I added all that in. I'm giving it a good mix. I like putting in some frozen vegetables to cook. I right now am putting in some mushrooms that I had on hand, which was like 4. It was not very much at all. So I just diced those up, put those in to kind of get rid of them. And use them up. And then I'm going to use this bag of mixed vegetables. I'll put that whole bag in, and then I'm going to steam it. Now, right before, usually about an hour before this whole mixture is done, is when I will go in and add in either the noodles that I make, or if I have like frozen egg noodles, you can do those too. Or this evening, I'm doing just cutting up some biscuits and throwing those in. I have heard people using tortillas, like I think they're flour tortillas. I have never done it. However, I had a lot of people suggest to use that. So if you are looking for like dumplings, I guess you can use those as far as dumplings too. But this was something that I threw together. It was so quick, and it just cooked all day, and it was super nice because then at dinner time, all I had to do was cut up these biscuits, throw them in, and we had dinner an hour later.
Know that I won't leave you. I'll stay beside you. I'm never letting you go. You've been lost and alone in the city lights, I know, but I will guide you home.
Here's how it looks once I cut up the biscuits, but they haven't cooked. So I cut them up, I added them to it, and this is what it looks like. Now here is what it looks like after about an hour, hour and a half. It is nice and cooked and bubbly and ready for dinner. But that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.